Okay, recording. Sorry about that.
It's all good. Good evening again, everyone. So we'll let Kirsten Chillen, City of Nanaimo, Zero Waste Coordinator. Christine is grateful to have been living and working as an uninvited guest on Nanaimo's, Nanawas, and Stimonis territories for the past 6 years. Her previous positions in solid waste were with the Cowichan Valley Regional District, Recycle BC, and Regional District of Nanaimo. Kirsten graduated from VIU in 2017 with a Bachelor's of Arts in First Nation Studies, and during her studies was fortunate to have taken the semester in Natural Resources Studies through the Haidai Kwai Institute. While she has a broad interest with human-environment relationships and environmental policy, Kristen is especially fascinated with waste because it's something everybody consciously interacts with on a daily basis. Please welcome Kirsten.
Hi, everyone. Is my screen showing properly now? Great. All right. So I am the Zero Waste Coordinator. Thank you, Micah, for the introduction at the City of Nanaimo. I'm going to talk to you today about 3 things. So first is the role and responsibilities of different players in the waste field in Nanaimo and then in the province. Second, I'm going to talk about our checkout bag reduction bylaw. And then I'm going to talk about the city's curbside program. All right. So when we look at the senior governments, the Government of Canada and the province both have roles to play. The Government of Canada, they actually just added in their Environmental Protection Act plastics as one of the toxic substances. So that will give them some more leverage to do nationwide jurisdiction and waste management, especially in plastics, which I think everyone is pretty interested in these days. The province, they have various ministries that do work in solid waste management, the primary one being the Ministry of Environment and Climate Change Strategy. And their key legislation for managing waste is the Environmental Management Act, which mostly what I interact with under there is the recycling regulation. They also regulate product stewardship responsibility programs in BC, which I'm going to talk about in a moment. And then we have our local governments here. So the Regional District of Nanaimo, so Jane and Sonam are here with us today from the Regional District, and I'm here from the city. So the city, our primary role is a service provider for a curbside collection service, and we also do education alongside that. We also do public space sanitation, and then we have special projects like the checkout bag regulation bylaw. The regional district has a broader role in waste management in the region. So they do waste reduction programs through the solid waste management plan, and they set long range targets for disposal goals and reduction. They do waste monitoring and reporting to the province. They operate the regional landfill and the Church Road transfer station. And they work with the province, municipalities like the City of Nanaimo, and then the region extends all the way down from Yellow Point all the way up to Bowser. So it's quite a big area. There's a few different municipalities in there, and then some electoral areas. And then they also provide curbside collection of food waste, garbage, and recycling to everywhere in the region except for the City of Nanaimo. So this is an image of just some of the different players and systems of waste management in the region. So you can see at the top there, there's single family homes, there's multifamily homes, businesses, institutions, and the construction and demolition sectors. There's different waste haulers. So municipal collection, that's the RDN and the city. There's self-haul, and then there's private collectors as well. And then there's different transfer facilities and recycling facilities. So the public transfer stations are the landfill, the transfer station, and then there's private depots as well. And then it will end up either in the landfill, going through the recycling facilities, going through the compost facilities, or some does get turned into hog fuel. So part of the depots in town, they take part in a really wide range of province-wide product stewardship programs. So a lot of you might be more familiar with the bottle depot or the bottle refund programs. So you get 10 cents back when you bring a container in. But there's also some for a whole bunch of different items. So everything from electronics to batteries to major appliances, fridges, outdoor power equipment, and TELUS, they even have one for modems. And then what we work with in the city for our curbside collection program is Recycle BC, and that's for packaging and paper from residential sources. So we have a few guiding principles when we talk about waste reduction. You might be more familiar with the 3 R's, and we expand on that with the zero waste hierarchy. So at the top there, the most ideal is rethinking, redesigning, reducing waste. So it's a lot easier to manage waste by preventing it in the first place. Once it's already in the system, then we do things like reuse, repair, recycle, compost. So recycling, you can either have more straight across recycling, so you have a package, returning that into the package. You can also have recycling through downcycling, so turning it into something that's more intended as a long-term durable product that at the end of its life likely is recyclable. At the very bottom, we have landfilling and then unacceptable incineration, waste to energy. And we've also taken a move lately to a circular economy. So this is moving from a linear economy of take, make, and waste. And we're shifting to a system where we design out pollution and waste, we keep products and materials in use, and we regenerate natural systems. So the city and local government in general, we don't have tons of leverage with our legislation and our jurisdiction to be able to tackle that top of a waste reduction hierarchy, the zero waste hierarchy. But fortunately, we do have the authority now granted by the province to put in the checkout bag regulation bylaw. So it might be seen as a small step, but it's going to be a really good improvement to get people to stop bringing in or stop just taking plastic bags altogether and bring in their own checkout bags. So why do we want to do that? 89% of Nanaimo residents thought it was important or very important to reduce, reuse, recycle. There's about 15 billion plastic checkout bags used in Canada a year. That's 400 per person. And each person in Nanaimo disposes of 95 checkout bags in the landfill each year. And only 22% of plastic bags and flexible plastic are recovered for recycling. So the checkout bag regulation, really what we're trying to do is encourage the reuse of clean checkout bags, but we're also banning plastic checkout bags from being distributed. And we set some acceptable alternatives. So that's paper bags that contain 40% post-consumer recycled content and reusable bags as well, but they need to be designed so they're washable and capable of 100 or more uses. And the regulation, which comes into force on July 1st, it will make exemptions, so like small paper bags, bags for bulk foods and produce, wrap for flowers, and multi-packs of plastic bags if you need to use one in your curbside program. Our curbside program, we have 3 waste streams that most folks here are probably going to be quite familiar with. So the recycling, organics, and garbage. So this is what's accepted in your curbside recycling: paper, paper packaging, and steel and aluminum containers and plastic containers. What we don't want in there especially is textiles and clothing, books, garbage, unsortables, which are items that are bagged or bundled. So once they go through the sorting process, they can't actually be separated it out. And then glass jars and containers, scrap metal, and plastic bags and flexible plastics. In our green cart, we have food scraps and soiled paper, which we've had in the program for about 10 years. And in the last couple years with our automated program, we've added leaves, grass, and light trimmings. The main source of contamination in the green cart is plastic bags, which includes biodegradable bags and degradable bags, oxo-degradable bags, PLA-based bags, everything like that. So the only plastic, like bioplastic item that's allowed in the green cart are certified compostable either by BPI or by compostable.info. And those items, they fully break down into water, CO2, and biomass. I just have some facts here. So in 2020, the average Nanaimo household composted 292 kilograms of organics in the green cart. 63% of the food we throw away or compost could have been eaten, which is really quite sad. The sources of food waste in Canada. So a lot of actually the ability to reduce food waste is through the consumer. So that's 47% of food waste overall. We have room for improvement. In the last waste composition study done at the landfill, up to 35% of waste buried in the landfill was compostable organics. And organic waste in landfills generates 4% of Canada's overall greenhouse gas emissions. So that's why it's so important to only put in the garbage what is actually garbage. So straws and cutlery, broken glass, diapers, and other sanitary items. So we really encourage people to recycle what they can in their curbside recycling and then in the compost bin, and then bring the rest of the items to the depots. And you can see here, this is our waste stats, kilograms per household through the curbside program. So we've added the organics program. You can really see it's picked up in 2019, and recycling has stayed pretty consistent for tonnages over the past decade. Garbage went down up until 2014, 2015, 2016. We increased the size of our cart, so the allowable volume for curbside, which has increased the garbage that people are setting out at the curb. But it's also reduced the self-haul trips that go to the landfill. So that's fewer greenhouse gas emissions to get rid of folks' garbage. And then when we look at the Nanaimo region, so that's the city and the RDN as a whole, we are sitting really well in the province as far as our waste reduction efforts. So this is the per capita disposal rates by region, and that's for 2017. You can see we're quite far below the BC average, and we're sitting behind the Cowichan Valley and then the Nanaimo or the Northern Rockies region for disposal. So your efforts as within our community to reduce and reuse are very good as far as reducing waste in our region. And then we are really, really lucky to have such a comprehensive recycling and composting network. So we can be ensured that what is actually recycled in our curbside program does get recycled locally whenever possible and responsibly. And that is my presentation there. I'm happy to open up to any questions. You might get some more information coming from Jane and Sonam also, just on wider waste reduction and waste management in the region. So it might be worthwhile checking in afterwards too.
I'll just pop in here, Kirsten, if I may. So thank you so much. And we've already got a lot of questions popping up in the chat, so that's great to see. Thank you so much. What a great way to start off this evening and this presentation. Super interesting about the checkout bag bylaw coming into Nanaimo. That's great. And I thought it was really interesting what you said about just the importance of the consumer, the power of the consumer in reducing food waste. That was fantastic. I will just start us off. I know, Maite, I see that you have your hand up. I would just like to ask Kirsten one question that was asked by a few people in the chat, just to start us off, and that was about glass recycling, just why glass recycling isn't part of the household pickups. I'm wondering if you have an answer to that for interested folks.
Yeah, for sure. So glass, it requires special handling at depots to be recycled. So what happens with our recycling, it goes into the cart and then it gets emptied into the hopper and into the truck. And in the truck, everything gets compacted. So glass is really prone to breaking in there. And then once it goes to the sorting facility, basically what the sorting facility is a huge conveyor belt. And there's a bunch of different equipment in there. So there's items like star screens and optical sensors and different types of equipment that sort out different types of waste. And then there's sorting workers along there as well. The biggest issue with glass in that one is it breaks, so it turns into small pieces that can't get recovered. So they're too small and they end up as garbage. And the big one is that it's a huge safety hazard to the workers in the sorting facility. So it needs to be kept separate from the other recyclables in order to be recycled properly. So that's done at a depot. Yeah.
Makes sense. Okay, thank you so much. I know that there's lots of interest here. We do have two other speakers, and hopefully some of our questions could perhaps be answered by those speakers. I'll remind everyone that we do have plenty of time at the end of tonight as well for further questions. But I'd like to hand it back over to Mika to introduce our next speaker tonight.
Hi, so we'll move on to Sonam Bajwa, is the solid waste planner at the Regional District of Nanaimo. Sonam holds a BA major in geography with a specialty in environmental studies, complemented by a certificate in spatial information systems. Prior to her 5 years at Regional District, Sonam was program coordinator for province and nationwide product stewardship organizations. She got her start in solid waste industry working for Tetra Tech, where she was a solid waste auditor and outreach ambassador. With a passion for social and environment causes, Sonam volunteered for David Suzuki Foundation and for Construction. In her time away from work, Sonam enjoyed perfecting her banana chocolate chip muffin recipe and exploring her pandemic pastime of macrame and crocheting. Please welcome Sonam Bajwa.
Hi, everyone. All right, so I am going to share my screen. Okay, so does that look good to everybody? Okay, excellent. So thank you for that introduction. Hello, everyone. I will be talking about our solid waste management plan. And since we don't have a lot of time, I'm just gonna jump right in so that we've got enough time for questions. I see them rolling in. Okay, so a little background on the plan. So our review began in 2013, and we worked with an advisory committee that was made up of local residences, businesses, and nonprofits, and there was community engagement throughout. And the plan was approved by the province last March. So we have our 10-year goal. So currently we divert 60% of waste from the landfill, and our new goal is a 90% diversion rate. Our existing solid waste programs. So we have school education. So we had partnered with a local organization that did presentations about waste reduction and zero waste. And I'll talk a little bit more about how this program itself has changed a little later. And we have recycling and organics collection at our RDN facilities. And we license all local waste collection facilities as well. So that way we know what's going to each location and how that material is being recycled. We also have a mandatory curbside service similar to what the city of Nanaimo has. We offer to waive the tipping fee for residents that are doing cleanups of illegal dumping in the area. And we've also banned some really, some of the easy to recycle material from our landfill as well. So these are our new and expanded programs in the plan. And I'm going to go into a little bit more detail on these over the next few slides. So this chart here shows the composition of commercial waste that's currently being landfilled. As you can see, Kristen spoke about this as well, a large percentage of the waste is actually compostable or recyclable. So the new programs will help divert that waste away from the landfill. So for construction and demolition waste and the industrial, commercial, and institutional, so that's the ICI, we're going to be looking at relaunching our education programs, looking to see what other material can be banned in the future, and increasing the enforcement of our existing bans as well. We are also at the very early stages of understanding the deconstruction industry and how we can support that in our region and how we can grow that sector as well. For school education, so we're working directly with the school board and we are helping to train teachers incorporate zero waste in their lesson plans. So that way it's a part of the yearly curriculum and yearly, I guess, projects and stuff that they're doing with the students. And we're also supporting student-led zero waste initiatives. We should be getting our final report on that soon, so I can't give too many more details about that. But for those of you that are interested here in the group, once I have the report, I will gladly share with anyone here. So household hazardous waste. So it's currently accepted at the depot, but there's still some material that falls outside of that program that we currently have in BC. So we plan to contract a facility to accept this material to dispose of it in a safe manner. We also have our zero waste recycling. So the zero waste recycling program actually made $300,000 available to organizations to further the circular economy. For 2021, we supported a couple of different organizations. One of them was focusing on repurposing textiles. Another was the expansion of an existing food recovering facility. And a third was the development of an upcycling program. So the next two programs here, the mandatory waste source separation and the waste hauler licensing, the two of the programs work together. So we'll be kind of talking about them a little bit more closely. So the goal of these two programs is to help grow our waste industry, to encourage diversion over disposal, and provide more convenience to residents. So we have our mandatory waste source separation. So the mandatory waste source separation program is going to apply to all businesses, multifamily dwellings, and institutions. And the requirement will be that they need to have bins for garbage, food waste, and recycling. So we're essentially taking garbage that's coming out of these locations and trying to get it something similar to the 3-stream curbside collection program. And as I mentioned, it's going to apply to commercial, multifamily homes and institutions. So waste hauler licensing. So right now, if somebody has waste, they are going to bring it to the landfill, or they will hire someone to bring it to the landfill. So what we want to do is license haulers and provide them a reduced tipping fee at the landfill. By reducing the hauler's cost, they are going to be able to offer competitive prices to residents. And I know what you're thinking. The haulers are just going to bring all the waste to the landfill. How does that help us reach our 90% diversion? So what we are also going to do is put a disposal levy on all waste that is landfilled. Oh, there we go. So we're going to put a disposal levy on all waste that is landfilled. So So this will encourage the haulers to pull out as much recyclable and organic material out of the waste that they receive, because the levy doesn't actually apply to that material that's diverted. The disposal levy will also apply to waste that leaves the region. So any material that leaves the region to be either landfilled somewhere else or incinerated will also receive this levy. So the goal of this is to curb waste leaving our region so that we can ensure that it's handled responsibly, and that all divertible material is actually removed. So between the mandatory waste source separation program and the waste hauler licensing, the volume of recyclables that are going to be available for market will increase, making recycling even easier. Okay, I just have one more slide. I see my warning. So this is our kind of breakdown of the amount of diversion that we're going to get from the different programs that we plan to have. So as you can see, we've got our expanding the ICI and construction, each gives us the 3%. So it gives us a total of 6. The bulk of the diversion is actually going to come from waste hauler licensing and the mandatory waste source separation programs to give us that additional 10%. And then the zero waste recycling will give us that extra 1%. You know, the increase of the EPR programs that Kirsten was talking about will give us that a roughly 5% to take us to our 90% diversion rate. All right, I know I went through that very quickly, so I can imagine we'll have some questions.
Thank you so much. I think that, you know, we did have a couple of questions about multifamily homes and, you know, when pickup and service for compost and garbage pickup and recycling, et cetera, will be available there. And you did answer that here. So that is coming with the mandatory food waste separation plan. And you said that was 2020 to 2022. So we should expect that that's coming soon.
Yeah, so I just did so I've done a draft bylaw. So like, yeah, I'm gonna give you guys like some really detailed information here. So we've done the draft bylaw for what the program's actually gonna look like. It's gone to our select committee. It's going to our board next week. If they approve it, it'll go for consultation. So I'm not sure if you guys are aware, but we have, the RDN has a Get Involved site. So anytime we're doing any consultation and we're looking for feedback from residents, we start a project page. So sometime in June, you guys will see a project page. And again, I can share that with the group here as well. And it'll give a little bit more detail about what the program looks like and its opportunity for residents to tell us what they think, what works, what doesn't work. And once we get all the feedback, you know, we'll update the bylaw, it'll go back to the board, and then it gets submitted to the ministry. And my goal is to have that done for the end of this year, because we want to make sure we have enough time for consultation as well. So we submit it to the ministry, and you know, hopefully they're speedy in getting back to us. And yeah, we'll see the program in place sometime next year.
Wonderful. Well, Sonam, thank you. And all of the websites that Sonam has mentioned and contact information as well for Kirsten, for Sonam, for all of our presenters tonight, we'll make sure that that is sent out to everyone after this evening in case your question didn't get answered and you would like to follow up, or you have something else that you'd like to follow up with too. Sonam, thank you so much for that. And we will have more time for questions with you at the end. But we do have one more speaker tonight. So Mika, would you please like to introduce our final speaker, and then we will open the floor up to questions for the rest of the night.
Hello, everyone. So our last presenter is Jane Hamilton, is an environmental scientist with over 25 years of experience in the environmental field. She started her career on the East Coast working with consultants on contaminated sites assessments. She spent 10 years doing similar work in Ottawa for federal departments before moving to the island in 2011 and working for the RDN. Jane has managed the various environmental programs and landfill gas infrastructure as an environment technician and expanded her leadership role as a superintendent of landfill operations for the last 7 years. She recently completed a Master of Science degree in environmental practice from Royal Roads University and will receive her degree in June 2021 convocation. In her spare time, Jane loves to mountain bike with her family and explore the local trails with her four-legged companion, Rupert. Please welcome Jane.
Yes, hello. Can you see me well? You see my presentation? All right, thank you so much. I wanted to talk about what happens at the end of the line. And I'm the last speaker, and it's kind of timely that I get to discuss with you sorry, I'm just fighting with my mouse here a little bit, but that's okay. I will page down instead of scroll down. And beg your pardon. There we go. So what I wanted to talk with you about is you all put your garbage on the curb and you don't necessarily know what happens with it after that. So I have a team of folks. There we go. I wanted to be able to also see on here. So there we go. What we do, so you have an appreciation of what happens after you put your garbage on the curb. I can't quite see my notes here very well, but I wanted to cover the landfill systems from the bottom up. I'll introduce you to my operations team and what they do and how we keep this show on the road day to day. I wanted to say that I don't feel down in the dumps really at all. Yes, it's a messy job, but it offers all the environmental challenges a gal like me could want. And I prefer to think of it as more of a thrill of the landfill. Anyhow, we are managed by a regulatory framework. Kristen mentioned it earlier, and federal and provincial regulations apply. We're under the Environmental Management Act, and we have municipal criteria for solid waste, which was new in 2016, and a landfill gas regulation. Under the federal framework, we manage birds through the Canadian Wildlife Service. We report on our greenhouse gas emissions annually, and in a regional system, we have bylaws in our solid waste management plan. So then the landfill was developed in stages. It was really a dump site back in the 1930s, so it's really quite an old site. And to the left, you'll see old cell 1, it's unlined. And then on the right side, you'll see the bottom liner areas that were installed in various years. Anyway. I'm operating with a laptop and 2 screens here, and anyhow, we did a North Berm expansion in 2016 for lateral stability and geotechnical stability in case of an earthquake. We wanted to make sure the landfill didn't move on us, and so we also installed, as part of that, you can see on the left side of the liner system that goes down. It's very heavy plastic, and the leachate collection system on the right. And so we collect whatever falls through, what precipitation enters the site as rainwater. There's a number of cover systems that happen. You have daily cover. Those plant panels on the right side, you can see we put them on with the excavator or the loader at nighttime. Intermediate covers, 12 inches for places we're not going to be for a while. And then finally, final cover systems include a lot of different layers, like very heavy membrane covers and topsoils and sand layers and gas collection layers above and below these heavy liners. And so these systems cost quite a lot of money. Like the next section we're going to do is $3 or $4 million. And so we just want to be sure before we put that on there that we don't want to rip it up again. And so we're trying to be cautious. But only one section of the landfill has final closure on the far end, and more is in the books for the next couple of years. And so hopefully we're not going to be so ugly and stinky anymore, or we'll get better at that. But it's something we struggle with, I know. But anyhow, this is one of my chief of equipment and maintenance, Brent. He is in charge of keeping the machinery running. The garbage comes in, I say it's relentless. It's like the tide, it's coming every day, whether your machines are working or not. This is Chad. He's my engineering technologist on our team. He's from Saskatchewan, but we like him anyway. And he makes sure that we build these cells appropriately. He directs the operators, and we build it cell by cell, like Lego block by Lego block. And so we're building a mountain with garbage every day. You guys might know the recycling and the tip area where the cross the scale house, but then there's all the commercial traffic comes around and up. And these black tarped areas are an example of interim cover, where we try to keep the clean rainwater off and keep the gas in. Shane is our environmental monitoring technician. He's in the Dana from Star Trek to my team, and he manages on a quarterly basis the environmental monitoring program. He touches all of these wells, groundwater wells, shallow and deep aquifers we monitor 4 times a year, stormwater, the leachate collection system. So there's also these landfill gas system in the middle, all these points and lines. This is the vertical and horizontal wells that we have in the pile. And so the yellow lines there are what's happening below the pile and all around the edges. And then the red ones are how we connect to the municipal system, and everything that comes out the bottom gets directed to the wastewater treatment plant. And so we have 52 vertical wells, 10 horizontal trenches. We're installing them quite regularly to control gas. We started this in 1997, even though we were only regulated to do it in 2016, but we wanted to demonstrate leadership in this field. And also we mostly wanted to be a good neighbor. We have residential areas nearby. And so we were concerned about odors and trying to be sustainable. So we have a gas collection system where all of those lines come together into the back of this building. We monitor it. Shane and maintenance technician, they monitor the sample of the gas to make sure we don't have oxygen getting in the pile, because oxygen can create the conditions for a fire, which is the last thing anybody wants. So we have to be quite careful with what we do. We pull all the gas to the flare station. So there's a blower system and it sucks. Basically, we put a vacuum on that whole pile all the time and pull the gas in. It is operational 95% of the year. Last year, we collected over 3,360,000 cubic meters of landfill gas. It's either burned up the candlestick, or we send it to a utilization facility. And so as the gas comes in, it's monitored by a very sophisticated system of process control. And so we see it as the gas comes in, it goes through blowers. There's continuous monitoring of the concentration of methane, and if there's any oxygen in the system, because we don't want that ever, as little as possible. And so we get alarms. The system will shut down. It emails us out an alarm and lets us know if there's unhappy conditions out there. And so the gas is sent to the bioenergy plant for the most part. Instead of being flared, it's sent to this big double membrane gas holder, it's called. The kids who come on tour, they call it the Death Star. It sort of looks like that from Star Trek. Anyway, they run the gas through generating engines that generate electricity. And so they can power up to about 500 households, depending on the time of year, or maybe more. They do plan to expand and develop biogas, maybe put a rapid charging center station out in like Woodgrove or somewhere. They want to be able to maybe offer free charging of electric vehicles. They're going to use their waste heat. And so also the RDN has a new carbon neutral plan that was just approved by the board. We have a manager of long range planning and sustainability, Kim, and Jessica, a coordinator for climate change and resilience. Their corporate carbon neutral plan plans to use renewable natural gas or renewable diesel, changing our fleet vehicles to electric. But what they discovered is that 52% of the emissions are from solid waste. And a lot of the fingers get pointed back at the landfill, either through the curbside trucks. The big compactors alone, they burn over 100,000 liters in a year. And so that's a lot of fuel. We generate the pile itself, the garbage generates emissions that we try our best to capture, but it is quite a challenge. We do plan to improve when we buy heavy equipment, that we're going to buy low fuel low carbon as much as possible, but the hybrids are not that available yet in heavy equipment. We're going to work continuing our landfill gas collection system and expansion of the well field. But what's really is important and where you guys come in is that the reduction in waste volumes is critical. And so that's why this ties into Sonam's presentation on supporting the solid waste management plan and the implementation of it. Anyhow, it'll help us achieve our regional carbon neutral goals. Thank you very much.
Jane, thank you so much. Jane, that was super interesting, really technical, but also super interesting and good insight for us. We have a couple of questions here. Maybe I can just kind of throw at you they're all kind of related. So these come from folks who have emailed in or just put them in the chat here. So a couple questions about methane. Just wondering if the methane captured also comes from food waste as well. A question about how much methane is captured or how much is collected, sorry, and how much escapes. And then a second question about the future of the landfill, if a new site is being planned and other landfill sites outside of the RDN. Sorry to throw all that at you.
No, that's okay. So when waste rots over time, there's a curve as things degrade and the methanogenic bacteria get at it. So there's we started a food waste ban in 2010, but there's old garbage in there. People do their best, but there's still organics in the pile. And so it's from food waste, and it's also from just the natural decay of organic material like wood and other compostable, like not technically compostable food waste, but other non-plastic items that deteriorate over time. We are working on a phased development review and seeing how we can make the most within our footprint of the property and maximize our space, because really nobody wants a new landfill, but we all are still making garbage. So it is a challenge for us all, but we're evaluating. We have an engineering projects and services that are evaluating options or what we can do within our property line or what we might do right here. That's why we'll do some final closure once that's decided. We might want to try to steepen it a bit. And there was one more question about capture. And so we capture 65% of the gas that's produced. And so we want to do more, but that's still pretty high compared to other landfills. And once we put some final cover systems on or better closure, we're going to do some tarping, for example, that will also help collect the gas and keep it in there. These are all expensive sort of things to do, so we're careful, but we want to collect more as well.
Jane, thank you so much. Folks, please continue to share your questions in the chat here. I am going to go through the questions that have been shared previously in the chat, as well as those that were emailed in prior to tonight. So we have had a couple of questions. I'll just kind of open this up to the three presenters. We've had questions on plastics. So questions about what is the percentage of plastics that's recycled? Is it 10%? Is it more? Is it less? Specifically to Nanaimo. Also, are all the plastic items with a recycling symbol able to be recycled in Nanaimo? And then just kind of in general, how is our recycling sorted? Question about that.
Yeah, I can take that one. So first of all, amazing questions. Thank you all so much for your enthusiasm. I was really excited to read through all of them. We are really fortunate for our curbside collection program, so both for the city of Nanaimo and for the regional district, to collect as part of the Recycle BC program. So that's the same that a number of depots over the region accept their materials on behalf of. So what Recycle BC is, it's an extended producer responsibility for residential packaging and paper, and they operate underneath the BC's recycling regulation. And what that regulation does is it says the producers that create that material are responsible to pay for the collection and then pay for the recycling of that material. And then the province requires Recycle BC to report back to them annually, and that gets audited by a third party. So what we know from that is some really good data, and we're really fortunate to have such a good recycling program here. So Recycle BC, 90% of the material accepted or collected in the program is recycled. Their waste streams, and I have this available on the website too. It's kind of buried, but I will put the link in. So all of the curbside plastics are recycled on the Lower Mainland. So there's a facility called Merlin Plastics, and they recycle that there. And then, sorry, I'm just scrolling through here to find the information. The metal containers, they are sold to end markets in BC, Ontario, and the United States, and they're recycled into new packaging and sheet metal. And then paper collected in the curbside program is sold to end markets overseas, the United States and BC, and it's processed into new items like egg cartons, boxes, and other paper products. And then, so you can access this information if you want, if you go to recyclebc.ca, and then it's in their annual report. And then they also have information on end markets. Did that cover everything?
I think so. I don't know. And if we can, we'll be talking with the presenters to get, these resources and these websites that we can share out with folks afterwards, along with the recording. We had another couple of questions about the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange and why that is no longer around. If someone could speak to that, perhaps.
Yeah, for sure. I can say, and then Sonam can say as well. So the decisions like that to give out funding at that level would be done through the mayor and council, and then through the RDN's board of directors. And ultimately it was something they decided not to allocate that funding towards.
And I can add a little bit more detail to that as well. So the NRE did they did go to the city. They also came to our board. So, and it happened to align with when we were working on our solid waste management plan. So that zero waste funding that I had talked about, that $300,000 was actually set aside because, sorry, I'm jumping ahead a little bit here. So the NRE came and talked to the board, and as we're working on the plan, we knew that we had the funding there. So they had decided that initially it was, it was made available for any nonprofit, but they said that no, the NRE, we want to set this money aside for them. So when we wrote our plan initially and submitted it to the ministry, that $300,000 was actually set aside for the Nanaimo Recycling Exchange to work on essentially what I had said, we're working on programs to further the circular economy and working on programs to recycle items that don't currently have a market, which is what a lot of the NRE was already doing. So we had been in touch with the NRE, and they did apply for some of the funding, but a lot of the funding was sitting there. So the board then made the decision to actually make that funding available to all groups, and that's why we were able to support additional programs. So one of the groups that we are currently supporting with that funding is the NRE. So the NRE is currently doing waste audits for businesses to help them understand what kind of material and what kind of waste they're producing, and help them kind of change production and change their materials so that way the waste that they have is easier to divert.
So still around, but just kind of in a different form and function. Okay.
A different capacity.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. We've had a couple of questions also about, so a question here, is the wrong placement of garbage and recyclables still a big problem? I think that was kind of touched on in terms of contamination. And, also to prevent that, folks are saying, it's can be confusing. How, I got to do all this research to know where I recycle what. Is there a way to simplify it, or a resource that folks could look to?
Yeah, so great question. I know recycling and composting can get so complicated. So really my empathy to all of you out there, because there are so many different types of packaging that are being created, and it's
it's just so hard to keep up with it and have a simple and accessible format for people to be able to look at. So what we have to do that is, if you're part of our curbside program, on the top of your carts, there's pictures of the most important images and items that should go into that program. And it says 3 items that aren't accepted in each of the carts. We have tons of information on our website. And we also, probably one of the best tools for looking those items up is our What Goes Where recycling directory. So there's over 900 items, I think it's almost 1,000 now, that you can type in, look it up, and we'll say if it's accepted in the curbside program, if it's accepted in the depot, so where you can bring it. And if there's something that's not in there, you can suggest item 2. And what I'll do is I'll take a look and I'll add it in, so that information can be accessible to you.
That's great, Kirsten. Thank you. Another couple of questions here about textiles. So, you know, talking about textiles can be too soiled, perhaps, to be able to donate. What can be done to keep textiles out of landfills in the RDN here? And then also, perhaps this is a related question, what is an upcycling program?
Sure, I can speak to that. So in terms of what you could do right now, it makes it a little bit trickier, but if you recall, I had talked about our zero waste recycling program. So one of the groups that we supported with that is the Gabriola Island Recycling Organization, so GIRO. And one of the things that they're working on is creating a kind of circular economy around textiles, because they receive a lot of textiles. And obviously that first step is if we can find somebody to buy that material. Like, you know, they've got a little store there, so you can go and, you know, somebody donates a shirt, you want a shirt, you know, the whole thrift store. And then they come into the textiles that, you know, just don't work, you know, they're too soiled, or, you know, they're kind of past their life. So what they're working on now is some research on how to best, you know, reuse those items. I know that they recently had they had kind of put a call out to people of like, tell me some of the best ways that you can come up with recycling or reusing and repurposing some of these items. And so there was actually a couple of people that came up with some really cool ideas. Again, you know, I don't have that final report on me to be able to share that information. We'll have something closer to the end of the year, but I know they're working on some really, really great ideas. And the goal from their program is to, like, they're really methodically keeping track of everything that they're doing. You know, they're making videos, they're buying sewing machines to be able to fix items. So they're really working on understanding exactly what they can do. And because it's an island, you know, they're kind of the perfect environment to really have a good pilot project to really understand what's going to work. And the goal is, you know, after a year or 2 of them running this program, that we're going to be able to expand that to the region and have other organizations participate in this program as well. So it's not just the thrift store side, but the best way to repurpose those items and keep them out of the landfill. So, you know, we're at the early stages, but it's definitely something that we're working on.
Thank you. Folks, we have, it is coming up to 8 o'clock. Our presenters have agreed to stay on longer. If anyone does have the time and would like to stay, we do still have a number of questions that we'd like to get through. So please, you know, if your time is up, you're checking out, thank you so much for joining us. If you do have time to stick around, we'd love to have you. And we're so grateful to our 3 presenters for giving us a little extra time here to answer these fantastic questions that we have. I'd like to ask a question here that these were sent in, just talking about so getting businesses to reduce that unnecessary, unrecyclable packaging. Another question kind of related to that about examples of completely eliminating plastics from the waste stream. And And this, I think this was kind of touched on that mandatory food waste, one of the presenters had that kind of, the timeline of what's coming up, but maybe if you could speak more to that, not just for food waste, but also when will commercial and industrial clients be doing mandatory recycling? So really holding commercial industrial clients accountable and really encouraging them to just eliminate those unnecessary plastic packaging, etc.
So as far as reducing plastic packaging, as I mentioned, kind of going over the roles and responsibilities, the local governments ourselves, we don't have that much authority to be able to do changes like that. So as far as changing packaging or reducing items, we have got authority from the Ministry of Environment to do the checkout bag regulation. So that's one of the first steps we're taking in that regard. The province is working on making changes to the community charter, which would allow us to also ban styrofoam and stir sticks and cutlery and straws without requiring provincial approval beforehand. So that would make the process a lot quicker. So I'm not sure if you know, we've been working on the plastic bag ban since 2017. It's been a really long process, and there's been a lot of legislative hurdles and loops and bounds with the City of Victoria's bylaw. So once they make those changes to the community charter, it would be a lot quicker for us to be able to put something like that into place. One of the aspects is that a more harmonized approach, so a larger geography, is going to make changes like that more effective. So ourselves and then the regional district, we take more of an advocacy role to promote the provincial government and then the federal governments to put those changes into place. The federal government is planning on banning single-use plastics like plastic bags, stir sticks, six-pack rings, cutlery, straws, and styrofoam food packaging. So they did say by the end of this year, they're working on getting that regulation in place. So that will be a helpful change, and we're really looking forward to it.
Yeah, and I'll just add as like a fun piece of information. I don't know if any of you are aware of TerraCycle. So, recognizing that there's that need for packaging reduction or reusing, it's pilot projects working with specific companies, and I haven't seen any in Nanaimo, but the hope is that, they're able to work with more businesses and more larger companies that do just start to work towards creating regular packaging that's reusable, so it's not like a specialty store item. You can go to Superstore and the deodorant that you buy happens to be in reusable packaging. But it might be interest to some of you if you guys want to check that out as well.
Yeah, that sounds super interesting. Yeah, if you don't mind, again, sharing all of these resources, we'd be happy to send them out to folks here. We have another question here. This is a little more technical. So this is a question. It says, is the RDN or city looking into feedstock recycling or thermal conversion? Although it has high energy use, it's able to accept all forms of plastic, even food soiled plastics, and convert them back into oil, which can be made into new plastics with 99% conversion. I'm wondering if any of our speakers are familiar with this feedstock recycling and could speak to that question.
Yeah, I can definitely speak to that. So the first thing I want to mention is that as part of our solid waste management plan, we did adopt that zero waste hierarchy that Kirsten had shared in her presentation. So at the bottom of that is landfill, but it also says incineration, not supported. So, but recognizing that as part of our solid waste management plan, we did say, and we recognize it, it's a 10-year plan. A lot can happen over 10 years. Technology advances quite quickly. So there's a recognition that as the RDN, to be responsible to our residents, that we should be aware of the way that the technology advances. So right now, the regional district of Nanaimo, Cowichan Valley Regional District and Comox Valley Regional District have a partnership where we're working with a consultant to keep an eye essentially on what's happening with Sustain. So Sustain is similar to what this feedstock conversation is that, waste to energy facility that's currently in Halifax. In Nova Scotia, not in Halifax. And they are at the beginning stages. So we meet with them often to understand kind of where they're at, how the process is actually working. Not to say that this is something that, the RDN is, going to be doing, but it's part of our research and understanding of where the industry is at right now, just so we can be aware of what's going on. But we do have in our solid waste management plan that zero waste hierarchy, and our goal is to work from the top.
Thank you, Sonam. Another question here, and again, thank you so much, folks, for staying on later here. So about the compost facility, just a question if it's an industrial compost facility, and just talking about a lot of products or containers, I think the question was specifically about some of those single-use like cutlery and that specialized plastic cutlery that need to be composted in a special facility. So is ours that industrial compost facility? And is it possible to tour a recycling facility or any of these facilities that have been mentioned tonight?
I am happy to chat about the compostability and our composting facility. So our composting facility is privately run. It goes by a couple different names. It seems a little bit interchangeable, but Nanaimo Organic Waste or Circular Waste BC are the ones you could look up and you'll find some information. So our main guidance as far as compostability is the liner bags need to be certified compostable, and either through BPI or through www.compostable.info. So those are two bags or two logos that would be on the bags themselves, and it needs to say certified compostable. And that meets international standards to be able to break down within a certain amount of time in industrial composting facilities. So that doesn't mean that it could go into your backyard composting. It needs to go to the industrial composting facility to be able to break down properly. And it will break down into biomass, essentially, and then carbon dioxide. There's a whole bunch of other really misleading labels out there, like biodegradable, plant-based, PLA. Even if it just says compostable without one of those labels, it's not necessarily going to break down in our composting facility. And another aspect is that we need a lot of food waste, a really high ratio of food waste with a really low ratio of that liner. So it needs to contain food waste when it goes into there. We are working on developing further information as far as other compostable products that are out there. So the main ones that we've seen in the past, however many years, 10 years or so, are the paper packaging with a plastic liner in them. So that would be a bioplastic, and it might say certified compostable. Those are most likely okay, and they're most likely going to break down sufficiently in the composting facility. The harder bioplastic products that are more substantial and more bulky, so like cutlery or bowls or that kind of item, we still don't have enough information, and the standards don't necessarily mean that they're going to break down in the composting facility. So we're working on a long-term strategy to sort of see where the industry is going and make sure we have sufficient information, because it's always changing, and we don't want to put out information one year and then different information the next. So we want to make sure that our strategy is keeping the long-term information in place.
Thank you. And I think, it's been mentioned already that technology is always changing. So I guess we can keep our ears open for if that changes in the future as technology advances. I just wanted to commend Helena had said in the chat here that she really believes that reducing consumption and educating the public can really reduce garbage, and herself, she only produces 3 grocery bags of garbage in a year. So that's, you know, that's fantastic. And I think something we all can strive for. And related to that, we had another question that asks, if 90% diversion is achieved, if that's our goal of waste diversion is achieved, how many years before the remaining 10% would fill the current landfill to capacity?
Yes, we do every year, we do a bit of an analysis on the remaining space we have left. And that's why we use those big cover panels I showed you, because it saves space. The goal is to have 90% diversion. Every year we calculate, right now we have about 23 years of room left. We're doing studies to evaluate that a little better, but as we get better at diverting, our population also increases. So some of that sort of balances out a bit. But Sonam, I'm not sure if she has much input in their or insight into this question either, but I can get a bit more detail in the assumptions used to calculate that 23 years and get back to people. But anyway, it's time to really start evaluating what we can do. There's not a lot of time for Plan B, I say.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
I don't know if I can add a lot more. I will share something that I've heard my manager say a number of times, which is, 25 years ago, there's 25 years left on the landfill. And here we are 25 years later, and there's about 25 years left on the landfill. And really, that's between the technology and the new programs that we roll out. So I can't necessarily say that, we reach our 90% and then, I can't break down all the technical details, but what I can say is I do have a lot of faith in the community here. And, I would say a lot of faith in myself to be able to roll out these programs. And, I feel like, we're saying right now that there's that 25 years left, but, I think we'll be good for a number of years. And, having somebody like Jane and the fact that we're having these conversations and thinking about these things now, is what brings me comfort and hopefully brings all of you comfort of, we're aware of the issues and those are the things that we're working on.
Yes, and thank you so much, and what an inspiring comment. Also, just wanted to share, other uplifting messages from folks who are just putting in the chat here. A shout out to the RDN and Nanaimo for being ahead of the curve on waste management. More can always be done, but citizens need to do our part too. And again, just talking about packaging being a real problem. Maita also sent a message and just saying that she learned a lot and really appreciated the interesting and educational forum. We do have other questions that have come in the chat and in the emails, but I know that it's been so much time and there are folks that are sticking around here. If anyone here, if your question hasn't been answered yet, if you'd like to raise your hand, perhaps we could have a few more minutes to answer any kind of final questions from folks that are still sticking around here tonight.
I just wanted to add, Sam, that somebody was asking about tours, and we do a lot of tours with school children. It has slowed down a lot with these days in the last year, obviously, but we do reach out to various groups at the landfill. They come and see the action, all ranges from the elementary school to high school. University students visit us regularly. And so there is a lot of education going out to the young people and showing them what we do and what happens. And anyhow, there's tours available. I say when the world starts turning a bit normal again, or even we can try to distance a group. But anyhow, you're welcome anytime to come see what we do.
That's fantastic, Jane. Thank you so much. And Sonam, I do see your comment. Thank you so much. And sorry for keeping you extra, but thank you so much for all of the information tonight. We appreciate it.
No worries. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night.
Does anyone have any final questions for Kirsten, for Jane here this evening? If you'd like to just, raise your hand and unmute yourself. I see Depka Dover Bay. Go ahead.
Hi there, I'm Chris Depka. I'm a teacher at Dover Bay Secondary and teacher sponsor of the Dover Bay Eco Club. And they've answered pretty much some of the questions, and one of them was the sort of the confusion that we as consumers have regarding what is actually compostable and biodegradable in the facilities. And it sounds like sort of we're continuing to upgrade our facility here in Nanaimo. And it looks like there's a website there where we can go to, or there's a information site where we can go to find exactly what we can. Because what we're trying to start at our school is the products that or the containers that we have at the school, are they gonna end up being able to be recycled or composted at the facility at the RDN? And so we're trying to make a connection is, can we get our suppliers to order stuff that can be composted and recycled? But it's sort of hard and very confusing because so many products seem to be that say on them recyclable, but then they also say only at an industrial facility. And that's why I kind of asked that question regarding, is it an industrial facility that we can compost at? But you had mentioned, and I didn't quite catch all of it, that there was 2 specific sort of titles that are indicated on the packaging. And I just wanted to know if you could kind of just go over those 2 things again.
Yeah, for sure. So our facility, we recognize 2 certification processes for compostability. So one is BPI, and that's Biodegradable Products Institute, and the other is based out of Quebec. And their logo, it says www.compostable.info, but their BNQ is what it stands for. Like I mentioned before, what our hard yes, or what we can say for sure, is certified compostable liner bags are accepted in the composting facility. Most likely, paper packaging with a certified compostable bioplastic liner. So that would look like maybe like a soup container with a shiny coating on the inside. If that's certified compostable, it's most likely not going to cause an issue, just because that's a lot of organic paper compared to a really small amount of bioplastic. What we're not sure about, and what I'm unable to say a hard yes or a hard no, just because the industry is changing so much, they're still working on making the standards better on a federal level, is harder bioplastic items. So like you'll see a lot of cutlery out there that will say compostable. Those ones I can't say yes, I can't say no. It would take a lot of time and money to do a feasibility study in our local organics facility. So we're relying a lot on the federal level to be able to have some more guidance on that. And then we're working with people from the ministry. I'm at the city, I'm working with the RDN, and we're also reaching out to people that make those products to see if we can get better information. So we can give you that hard yes or that hard no, but at the moment, we just don't have that information.
So my
thank you so
follow-up
much
question is, if we at a school buy what would be called biodegradable or compostable cutlery, which kind of looks plastic, if we put it in the compost bin and it goes to you at the RDN, what's going to happen to it then?
Most likely, it would be screened out, and it would be over, so it would be landfilled, just because it appears like plastic. It's not something that we can for sure recognize that is a certified compostable item. So most likely it's going to get screened out and put into the landfill.
Perfect, thank you.
Great question, Chris and Kirsten. Thank you so much.
I was just going to say that Orga World is expanding and increasing their capacity and their process down there. So there may be improvements as they develop. And so the compost facility has taken new ownership, and they are developing. So it's going to be interesting to see. But if it's still compostable, if it's not compostable by them, it will produce gas in the long run and go into the pile with me anyway.
Thank you for that. We'll probably have our last question. Brian, you can go ahead.
Yeah, it's a cynical question, I guess. I know, I understand we're sending our recycled material over to, is it Merland, on the mainland? Have we ever done an audit of what happens with it? And do we trust that they aren't just shipping it off to third world countries for processing or whatever they do with it? Because I know there's an awful lot of stuff that, like Tetra Paks, et cetera, are very difficult to recycle, and I find it surprising that we say 90% of it is reused.
Yeah, so this is the Recycle BC program. So for curbside, and then they work with a number of depots. So the regional recycling and GFL, it's called now, but it was Alpine. And then London Drugs also accepts materials on behalf of Recycle BC. So they do report to the province annually on what happens with their recycling. And that is audited by a third party. It's not something that, like, I look into it and I'm very interested, but I don't have the resources or the time to like do a stakeout or an investigation to make sure. So it's something that I have to trust the province on, that is actually being audited and it's being audited properly. They work with Merlin Plastics. Merlin Plastics has recently signed a pact with Nova Chemical Producers. So they are a packaging producer within Canada. So they're ensuring that a lot of the plastic that Merlin is creating out of our recyclables is then can be turned into new plastic packaging within Canada. Another component is the federal government has goals for performance standards for recyclability content. So when these measures are going to put in place, that will put more demand onto recycled plastic resin as opposed to virgin plastic resin, and that will be promoting more to be kept into production. And then of course, looping back to the zero waste hierarchy, it's so important to reduce and reuse. So that's really going to keep waste out of our waste stream. It's really going to reduce. We do have a really amazing recycling program, but always remember to reduce and reuse first, and then recycle is the last resort.
Kirsten, thank you so much. Jane, did you have something to add to that as well?
No, well, Brian, I can just understand your concern in shipping our problems into developing nations where they don't take responsibility or handle them well. That does have to stop. And I understand your concern for sure. It's not a responsible way. So I'm hoping Kristen is accurate in what she's saying, and that there is a bit more emphasis on handling that within our province.
Agreed, Jane. And I think that we all would agree that, you know, by shipping our recyclables out of the country in the first place is probably not the most responsible, you know, way on our part to handle that as well. So Mika, before you wrap up here, I just wanted to say a huge thanks to everyone for attending, Bill for hosting us, and Kirsten, James, and Sonam, of course, for speaking. And I did just want to draw attention to Francis had a comment in the chat here, and just a shout out to all the women who are in this profession. And I think that that is super exciting in a profession that is, you know, traditionally male dominated, to see 3 female speakers here tonight, and just sharing such knowledge and expertise, and just the great work that you're doing, and everything that you've explained here tonight. So
thank you very much. And I just want to encourage anyone who's planning university or going to school. The environmental industry is a great one. You can reach out to me anytime. I'm a huge advocate for environmental studies. I can tell you a bit about what it's like if you want. So go for it. It's a great field.
Likewise, yeah, please reach out to me. I love talking about waste and environmental issues. So please reach out. Those phone calls and those emails are always the best part of my day.
Sounds good. We'll have to wrap it up. Thank you everyone for staying behind. We went over like around 30 minutes. That was good. Thank you all. So yeah.
Thank you so much for organizing, Sam and Micah and Bill.
have a great night, everyone.
We'll send a